All right, not to rush anybody, but it is 9:30 according to the clock. But feel free to make your way to the seats. Don't forget a Bible. You're going to need them. Oh. Every day can be Christmas. Why restrict it to December and July? All right. Nothing like revelation on a rainy day. How's everybody doing today? Good. Sad the sunshine's leaving us. I don't know. It was a good like 4-day stretch of beautiful weather, so I'm not going to complain too much. I'm tired this morning. so John Cutter's memorial was yesterday, and then Len and I had plans. We're dog sitting a third dog right now, which there's as with children, there's a big difference between 2 and 3. And this dog is extremely well behaved, but she's also a year younger than Macaron, so she's still kind of got that puppy energy. And more than that, she's in a new place without her people, and so she just follows you around everywhere, which in and of itself gets kind of exhausting. And it's also wearing our dogs out because they are, both of them have unique and powerful personalities and are used to being able to nap from 8, they wake up at 8 a.m., they go use the bathroom, they nap until about 10 or 11, they go on a walk, they come back in, they nap some more, and they go on a walk in the afternoon. That is not Moose's schedule, apparently. So, Moose, yes. Moose does not, she's a little bit smaller than our dogs, weight-wise, but size-wise, similar size. But she's like a Muppet. She's all black, wiry hair. She's got big eyebrows. It's kind of funny. Anyways, but then so we were going to take all the dogs on a hike yesterday afternoon, and we ended up doing a mini hike. But our next door neighbors had reservations at the whiskey library. Has anybody been to the whiskey library? Apparently, it's a big deal. You pay a lot of money to get a membership. So this is what I don't get. You pay a lot of money to get a membership so that you can make reservations. To pay them for food and whiskey, right? Like, you pay money to pay more money. But it was pretty neat. But one of the consequences of that is I didn't end up getting home until later than I was planning on, and I still needed to make chili last night. And I was making chili, and does anybody have an Instapot? Okay. My Instapot, 1 in 5 times the seal fails on it while I'm cooking something. And so, of course, I was to the stage where I wanted to do the pressure cooking portion, and the seal failed. Had to, and then it's not that big a deal. It just adds like 15 to 20 minutes because by the time anyways. So I went to bed later than I was planning on last night. So But I'm here. Woo! Give me a little more coffee and I'll be good to go. So, and I did not drink that much whiskey. What's that? Oh, it's in my office. I just feel like using the handheld this morning. I'm good. Okay. We're gonna be starting in Revelation 8 today. I just wanted to bridge between last week and this week, and kind of recenter us into the imagery of Revelation. So, if you're tuning in for the first time, I'm showing you something new. If not, I think hopefully you know what I'm talking about. The cyclical nature of Revelation. Last week I talked about the two kind of themes of images that are presented as a contrast, where the pattern that we find in Revelation, so last week we were in 4 through 7, is that you will get images of, and again, kind of categorizing, of doom and gloom, right? Contrasted with the image of the throne room. That is the home base, so to speak, that John returns to, or Jesus returns to, after every kind of presentation of challenging images. So at the end of 7, we closed with another image of the throne room. So we get the image of the throne room at the end of 3 and the beginning of 4, right? That is the concentric circles, the Lamb who was slain at the middle, the the 4 beasts, the angels, the 24 elders, the 144,000, and then the multitude beyond it, which represents creation. It represents an idealized vision of the world, right? This idea of all of creation, including all of humanity, united together in a common cause of praising God and the throne. And this is the image. For this reason they are before the throne of God and worship him day and night within his temple. And the one seated on the throne will shelter them. And this, of course, is that, the other contrast there is the idea that this isn't just human beings paying obeisance to the divine. This is God has gathered all creation. And again, this is metaphorical, right? This is an image. This isn't necessarily literally the image of resurrection, the afterlife, but it conveys meaning, right? Which is what we talked about John is trying to do. Several layers of meaning. There's not just one secret meaning that we're supposed to discern. If you read this and it gives meaning to you, it has served its purpose, right? You don't have to look. This isn't like. Has anybody ever done escape rooms? I think I brought this. Yeah, we've talked about this, which are fun. Escape rooms. If you haven't had a chance to do it, this is a great activity. This is a great multi-generational activity. If you ever want to find something to do with, your kids and your kids' kids, please. And there are a lot of the escape rooms that are geared towards children specifically. So the one we go to, which is up in like northwest industrial area of Portland, I can't remember what it's called. It's like Escape Room PDX or something like that. Every Christmas they do a kids Santa Claus themed escape room. So if you're looking for something to do with the grandkids over Christmas, I highly recommend it. They now also make escape room board games, and there's a couple of different companies that make different variations on them. One is, you can only do them once, right? After you figure out. So one of them, which is done by a company called Cosmos, you really can only do it once because you have to destroy pieces of cards to do things and put puzzles together. There's another one called, it's not coming to me. That one you actually use a mobile phone as a tool to do it, and that's reusable. And the fun part about that one is you can do it. It involves a deck of cards, and then you can give it to a friend, and they can do it and pass it on and so forth. But one of the things about escape room games or escape rooms or any type of puzzle, right? Whether you've done an escape room or not, if you've tried to solve puzzles, is how confusing meaning can be, right? And we'll talk about this later when we talk about numbers. But you're trying to find an answer. You're trying to find the correct clue. That's not what this is, right? There is no one right answer that you have to plug into the machine to get the correct output. This is more of a, and not to use a violent image, but more of a shotgun effect, right? This is John throwing an image out there, and it's him describing something that he experienced, he saw, that he derived meaning from, and he's giving it to these communities, expecting that they're also going to derive perhaps similar meaning, but perhaps not, and that's okay. So one of the things that I would reiterate today as we read through 8 through 11 is, don't feel like you're searching for the right answer, right? This isn't a puzzle game. This isn't the escape room, right? If you read this and it gives meaning to you, dwell on that because it's achieved its intended effect. And this image specifically comes back again and again and is especially at the end of John's revelation. This is the image we return to at the end. So we always return to good news. Okay, let's go to chapter 8. And this cycle of 8 through 11 is one of the more challenging cycles in Revelation, in that it's a little harder to see the silver lining, if that makes sense. And that's the point. But we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so in 4 through 7 we had 7 seals, now we have 7 trumpets. When the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Could you be? Yeah, right. And is this objective or subjective time? Are we in a? Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Is this a Genesis hour? Yeah. What's a Genesis hour? If one day is one eon, okay. Or are we in a celestial object approaching the speed of light? In which case, our subjective. Okay, never mind. Been reading too much sci-fi. What'd you say, Pat? Maybe it's dog year half hours. So we multiply that by 7, so it's 3.5 hours. So, and I'm laughing about. We're laughing about this. We should be. And again, this is the difference in interpretation. So there have been people who have read this and tried to discern the significance of half hour. Okay. Well, yeah, especially before international standards, right? When we have defined the exact duration of a second, right? And all of our watches and clocks are tuned to potty break. Yeah, the subjective half hour. Yes. Greek half hour. Yeah. Sorry. I can look up the Greek words, but this is not a metaphorical, or sorry. The ancient Greek peoples absolutely had a 24-hour day. Okay? It was not nearly as rigid in terms of, this, right? But their day was divided up into those same delineations. We have calendars. Sorry, I'm not going to get too much into calendars today, but, ancient peoples are way smarter than we give them credit for, by and large, right? We have done adjustments to the calendar. This is where leap year comes in and 29 days in February and all that stuff to make up for the wiggle room, because the delineations that we ascribe to natural events don't match up exactly. So, anyways. But yes, that's a good question, Susan. I can look up the Greek word, but the concept is the same. It's this. We're not translating units here. It's just, Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, and that's okay. that's what we do as human beings. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. And again, what is the significance of 7 in general? Wholeness. Hang on to that, okay? Another angel with a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given a great quantity of incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar that is before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Okay, what is the smoke, the censer representing in this case? The text kind of says it straight up, sort of. Prayers, yeah. Yeah, the smoke, the censer represents the prayers of the faithful, the prayers of the saints. If you remember, the image that we looked at last week was that the martyrs were below, underneath the altar. Kind of an interesting image. What's the significance? Yeah, literally a censer. Yeah. Or yeah, what's the name for it? It's not a thurible. Is it a thurible? Thurathumb. Thank you. What's the instrument that Jimmy Page played? Theremin. That's sorry. Never mind. The potentiometer. Okay. Yeah, squirrel. It's there. Yeah, and again, we're not looking for a right answer here, but just think about that, right? And then the angel takes the censer and throws it on the earth. Throws it on the earth, and there are peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Okay. Now, the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets made ready to blow them. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood. Oof. And they were hurled to the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. Okay, underline, pay attention here. Okay, all green grass. Underline, all green grass burned up. No more green grass. Okay. You're like, what's going? Are you crazy, Jesse? Well, remember it. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea became blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers, and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many died from the water because it was made bitter. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light was darkened. A third of the day was kept from shining, and likewise the night. And then I looked, and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew in mid-heaven, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth at the blasts of the other trumpets that the 3 angels are about to blow." What the heck is going on here? And I'm legitimately soliciting input because I don't know. And I was rereading Kester's section on this morning. And this is, by the way, one of the more tempting / dangerous sections, insofar as that from a modern perspective, are there potential analogs for what's being described here? Meteors, nuclear weapons, right? We can take these images and it's like associating, almost like a Rorschach test or whatever. What does this remind you of? My mother, right? Or what's the joke with Rorschach? It's always anyways. But mountains of fire being thrown into the sea, or literally. Sorry, I went too high up. A great star fell from heaven. Absolutely, a meteor. What might poison waters? I don't know, radiation. And so you can understand why people throughout history, especially in modern history, have looked at this and tried to do that matching game, right? Where, it's almost like a game of charades. Sounds like, looks like, smells like, it's been a while since I played charades. And you can see where the temptation to do this comes from, okay? one of the big questions here is, if that's the case, if this is John and or Jesus giving us these images, almost like in Amos, where God is speaking to the prophet Amos and shows him a basket of fruit, a kayetz, and he asks Amos, "What do you see?" And Amos says, "A kayetz, a basket of fruit." And God says to Amos, "A kates, the end is coming," right? It's this weird word association, picture of stuff. If that's what if John is doing, what's the purpose of it? What's the purpose of it? But this is the irony. This is the irony. All these things that are being presented here, how much control do we have over any of it? Zero. Zero. So if that's the case, all John is doing here, or all Jesus is doing, or whatever the Spirit is that's proclaiming this is doing, is scaring you. Right? Presenting images of things that are beyond your control, that you have no agency over. Yeah. To be fair, that's 66%, which is a D. Which hey, that's passing. P is for pastor. Yeah, right. And that's the other thing. What's with the focus on a third? Why that specific language? Sure. But keep in mind, how is this being transmitted to John? In a dream, and what is he doing? He is seeing things, he is seeing images, and he's doing his best to convey what he's seeing, to the extent where he often uses similes. It's like this. Is the image literally a pie chart that's being presented to him, and an angel's pointing at the pie chart with a stick saying it's a third is going to be destroyed? Is that what John is seeing? No. What John is seeing is a majority surviving. Okay? A majority surviving. So he is estimating. He's saying a significant minority is destroyed, but a majority is surviving. It's an important thing to cling to, but don't get too hung up in this yet. Okay? Okay, I'm going to move on. We can come back to this. Okay? Hang on to that. Hang on to that. Here's the other thing. In chapter 5, I'm pretty sure that the moon and the sun are gone. But wait, they're back again. They're back again, and not only that, but a third of the sun is struck. What does that look like? Like, how do you, yeah, right? It literally is a pie chart at that point, right? The sun is a circle, a third. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's a bad November. Yeah. We went to trivia at Tryon Creek Tavern on Tuesday, and one of the questions was, one of the theories, I'm actually giving you the answer, but because I can't remember how the question was phrased, but one of the theories for the beginning of the Black Plague was that one of the popes, Pope something, the 9th or 15th or something, identifying that cats were a symbol of the devil, issued an edict proclaiming that the eradication of cats in cities, which may have led to the explosion of the rat population, which might have led to the Black Death, right? Okay, it's not that. They didn't think that through. There are so many things human beings don't think through before they say or proclaim. And that wasn't the end of the world either, right? That wasn't the end of the world. But I bet to a lot of people that lived through the bubonic plague, it felt like the end of the world. Whole villages wiped out, right? To people living in Gaza, it feels like the end of the world, right? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And in Ukraine, and in Syria, and in Sudan, they've had, ends of the world have happened many times for people. How subjective is this? We get freaked out at the third, right? When roughly 3,000 people died in a terrorist attack, it was the end of the world for us, and it was less than a percentage of the American population, but it felt like the end of the world. Yes. Yeah. So again, put everything into perspective. It feels like the end of the world, but it's not. And then the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from that shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft, and from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given authority, like the authority of scorpions on the earth, and they were told not to damage the grass. Hold on, I thought the grass was all burned up. And they were told not to damage the grass of the earth or any green growth or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of the God in their foreheads. We'll go back to that. They were allowed to torture them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torture was like the torture of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee to them. But hold on, who's the they? Who's the they? The people with the seal on the forehead. But who are the people with the seal on the forehead? From last week, they're supposedly the righteous. So are you telling me that the authority that's given to the locusts that are like scorpions, they're given the authority to torment the righteous? Well, that's an odd thing. That's an odd thing. Yeah, right? Yeah, I have weird dreams too. And what are locusts that are given the authority of scorpions? And if you're sitting, okay, and by the way, again, you might be sitting here trying to puzzle this out. If you're sitting here going, I don't get what's going on, you're okay. You're in a good place. You're in a good place. And again, notice the repeated use of like. What's John doing? John's describing what he's seeing. Yeah. He is having a bad trip. Okay. And thank you, Wayne. He said being a believer doesn't mean that life is easy. This is going to be the text of the sermon this morning. So good segue. I'm not being facetious. This is literally what we're going to talk about. But notice the contrast here. Okay? When folks tend to interpret this book literally, the overall gist of it is that the righteous people are going to get taken to a place of happiness, whether it's by a vacuum or lifted up in the air, and the rest of us are going to suffer during the tribulation. And then Jesus is going to come back, and there's going to be 1,000 years of something, and then Jesus finally defeats the devil and the world ends. This image is describing the righteous suffering, which is a direct contrast with that interpretation. Yeah, but that's the scorpions. The scorpions. Go ahead, Paul. Oh, go ahead, Pat. No. Okay, sorry. Let me clarify. They were told not to damage the grass of the earth or any green growth or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were allowed to torture them for 5 months, but not to kill them. How do you say more?
Yeah. Well, now we're talking about the nature of subjectivity again. So if time is subjective, right? So we talked about a half hour maybe feeling like a year or feeling like a minute. Well, and why is so specific a time? Yeah. Why so specific a time? Yes. No, you're right. And I'm wrong here. It is describing those who do not have the seal on their foreheads. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. 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 No. So I need to back up because I have misled you. Nah, sort of. I have misled you a little bit because I in my brain I jumped ahead to the next passage, even though we're not there yet. So let me back up. What this is describing the idea, and again this goes back to our previous cycle in 4 through 7, where there were two types of people. There were the people with the seal of God on their forehead and the people that weren't. The assumption there, so if you're one of these 7 churches in Asia Minor, the assumption there is that is describing, that is delineating between the people that are people of faith, in this case, the Christian communities, the 7 churches in Asia Minor, and the people without the seal are everybody else. Where we're being led to, because we hear this, okay, this text is often interpreted that way, is that these are the folks that are going to be saved. Okay? And more than that, in 4 through 7, at the end of 4 through 7, we got a specific number, right? 144,000. Which has resulted in people trying to figure out who are they? And I joked last week about, no, Jehovah's Witnesses. I always forget that he's got 3 names. No, it's Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm trying to think of the guy Charles Taze Russell. Charles Taze Russell. He came up and he said, no, this is literally the number. Okay. And one of the things that we talked about last week is, what is this number? Well, it's 12,000 times 12. Okay. So again, 12 representing wholeness, completeness. What's 12,000 times 12? It's everybody. Okay. And it's not about the number. But this is where this leads us to, is this idea that what we're, in reading this passage, what we're supposed to do is supposed to figure out who are these people and who are these people, and how do we make sure that we're these people. Yes? Are you tracking me here? How many of you have had friends, relatives, acquaintances, people that you've met in the street telling you who these people are, why you aren't in that crowd, and what you need to do to get there? Yeah. I mean, when I when I decided I was going to go to seminary, I had one of the guys that I worked with at the chemical plant take me to lunch, and it was one of the most awkward lunches I've ever had. I thought it was going to be a lunch where he was saying, "Hey, good luck on your next endeavor, bye." He started by trying to sell me on an MLM scheme. After which he asked me whether I had been baptized or not. And I said, and I was confused because I was like, well, I told you I'm going to seminary, right? Like, doesn't that kind of preclude the idea that I've been in a faith tradition? I said, yeah, I was baptized. And he's like, but have you been baptized? And that was the point. And then again, I grew up sheltered from this to a certain extent. I didn't realize that this was a thing. And what I realized at that point is that this is what he was doing, is he was trying to figure out which category I was in. Okay. So in the text, in this image that John's receiving, these calamities are befalling the earth. A third, a third, a third, a third, a third. And now there are some locusts that have the authority of scorpions, which are further described in a second, that are allowed to torment these people. And I apologize for leading us astray. I was jumping ahead to chapter 11 in my preparation. We're not there yet. We have to get through this part. That are allowed to torment these people. But they're not allowed to kill them. They're allowed to torment them for 5 months. Very specific amount of time. Why? Why? Why would anything be given the authority to torment? And we're not looking for the right answer here. What's your gut instinct? Having heard a lot of interpretations, having had friends and family and co-workers ask you which category you're in, reading it that way, why would that be allowed to happen? Yep. It's the idea that if these scorpions, locusts, or people on horses with bows and arrows are allowed to punish and torture and cause suffering to these people, that it's going to cause them to want to change categories. Does that track? Does that track? Have we seen examples of that? Does anybody ever drive past those billboards that say 1-800-4-TRUTH, right? Has anybody ever called that number? I haven't had the courage to do it yet. But I suspect, and I don't know, maybe it's going to be somebody that's going to tell me about the wonderful love of Jesus and how I, as a created child of God, am loved into being no matter what my faith tradition or sexual orientation. I doubt that's going to be the conversation that I have, but that could be it. I might be selling them wrong. But I suspect, because I've heard it enough, that this is more what they're going to be saying, is that, no, you need to be in crowd A, and God will do whatever God needs to do to make you change your mind. How many of you have had success changing somebody else's mind by torturing them or berating them? Yes, I have. Yeah, that's true. I actually haven't tried that one. I haven't. I have not pulled out the thumb screws. Yes. I haven't actually had the opportunity to do that. And let's talk about what these look like. In appearance, so again, John is seeing images. In appearance, the locusts were like horses equipped for battle. So are they locusts or scorpions or horses? Who knows? Okay, they're beefy scorpion locusts. Okay, fair enough.
This might be a little off, but is this the second chance that, like, Tim LaHaye
Yes.
people talk about it?
Yes.
This is your last chance.
Yes. Yes. This is exactly it. Thank you. Brenda was asking, is this the second chance that Tim LaHaye, who wrote the Left Behind series, is talking about? Well, we've spread it. We've spread it, just like we've spread democracy. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. Don't put the cart before the scorpion horse. Okay, let's finish describing them. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces. Their hair was like women's hair. Their teeth like lions' teeth. They had scales like iron breastplates. And the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots and horses rushing into battle. Which is it? Which is it? What does this picture begin to look like to you now? Did anybody see the movie? Did anybody watch the movie Alexander? I think that was what it's called, with the Colin Farrell, which was picking an Irishman to portray Alexander the Great was an interesting choice. Anybody see that movie? Man alive. So the opening scene of that movie is the battle, the decisive battle that Alexander fights against the Persians in order to start his conquering of the earth. And one of the tools of the Persians were scythe chariots, right, with archers in the back, okay? What John is describing barbarians, for lack of a better word. He is describing the ever-present threat that the Roman Empire holds up as being the purpose of conquest and expansion, okay? And again, this is not about there being a right answer here. We're not unlocking the secret, but is this or isn't this not an image that the people who are reading this might understand? So he's describing locusts that look like scorpions, but no, wait, they look like the people from Persia or Mongolia. Later on, about 1,000 years later, we have the Huns that come through, or before that, we have Genghis Khan that comes through. This is an earthly threat. They have tails like scorpions with stings in their tail. In their tails is the power to harm people for 5 months. Again, very specific duration. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon. It means the destroyer. The first woe has passed. Okay? Yeah, I know. The first woe has passed. And there are still 2 more. Okay, if you're a math person, where might your brain might be leading you at this point? So the first woe is past. How many people have been killed? 1/3. How much of the planet's been destroyed? 1/3. What's the assumption here? Yeah, we're going to watch. This is a ticking time clock, right? They have been given the chance, their second chance at repentance. And if they don't, the assumption is it's the complete and total destruction of all of creation because, they missed the boat. Then the 6th angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar before God, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, "Release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates." What's the Euphrates? How much time do I have? I've got plenty of time. Where is the Euphrates? Iraq. Its partner, the Tigris. Tigris and Euphrates, the breadbasket of the world, Well, theoretically, yeah. That's one of many theories. So the 4 angels were released who had been held ready for the hour, the day, the month, and the year to kill 1/3 of humankind. Okay, here we go. 2/3. The number of the troops of cavalry was 200 million. I heard their number. I have to check, but I don't know that there were 200 million people on Earth at that point in time. Not alive, yeah. At least not in the Middle East. And this is a gazillion. Well, again, this is John describing what he's seeing. There's more than I could count. Yeah, it's a gazillion. He's a gazillionaire. Yeah. And this was how I saw the horses in my vision. The riders wore breastplates the color of fire and of sapphire and of sulfur. People have spent way too much time trying to pick that one apart. Sapphire is what color? Red. Sulfur. And fire, red and yellow. Who are these people? I don't know. Have you ever seen, are any vexillologists in here? Vexillologists? Flag people? Anybody collect or study flags? There's a great, anybody play Wordle? Okay, there's a game called Worldle, so you throw an extra L in front of the D, where it shows you the outline of a country, and you have to guess what it is. Same thing, you get 6 tries. If you get that right, there are like 10 more bonus questions that you can answer, one of which is pick the flag for that country out of a list of flags. And one of the things that you very quickly realize is that there are 200 odd nations in the world. We reuse flag designs quite a bit. And knowing that a flag is red, yellow, and blue does not help. It does not help. Okay. Sorry, I got distracted. The heads of the horses were like lions' heads, and fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths. By these 3 plagues, 1/3 of humankind was killed by the fire and smoke and sulfur coming out of their mouths. For the power of the horses in their mouths and their tails, the tails like... Okay, we're repeating the same thing. How much are we up to now? 2/3. I don't get too tricky here, Andy. We're not up to fractions yet. The rest of humankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands or give up worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone and wood, which cannot see or hear or walk. And they did not repent of the murders or their sorceries or their fornication or their thefts. How successful is this strategy so far? It's not. We've killed 2/3 of the human population, and no one has repented. No one has repented. So again, if we're talking seal and no seal, we've had 0 people make that transition because of this tactic. The torturing, the murdering, the destruction of the planet, stars falling from the sky, all of these grim images have had 0% efficacy in actually moving people from one category to the other. How does that track for you? Again, from a human perspective, how many of you have had great success in changing somebody's mind or converting them to Christianity by yelling at them about how they're going to die if they don't? It has to have worked a little bit, right? Otherwise people wouldn't do it, right? Historically speaking, it has to have worked, and I've seen evidence of that. But by and large, not super effective. That's a Pokemon term in there, sorry. What's that? The carrot was not big enough. They forgot the carrot. They only used the stick. If they would have thrown out the carrot, they might have got some winners.
But it's not lasting.
Yeah.
That kind of fear, I mean, you may go to the altar during church camp.
Yeah.
Altar call.
Yeah.
But you get back home and it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it lasted just long enough to get you out of that awkward social situation. Yeah.
How many people on the verge of death or physically dying start praying?
Yeah.
Start praying, and then once they get well, it's like, I don't need prayer.
Yeah. Well, and not to follow too fast of a squirrel. One of the populations of people that I've had a lot of, and it's not I shouldn't describe it that way. I often run into a lot of people who have lived lives of sin, had a moment of conversion, and then have become inexplicably judgmental. Okay, so I'm not the only one experiencing this, which I always find fascinating. I figure if you've walked on the other side of the tracks, that would teach you more empathy and sympathy for the struggles of living, and it doesn't. And one of the things that I've often wondered about is why is that? Why is that? And I think a lot of it has to do with certainty. Those of us who have lived lives of dissolution and debauchery, we went all in. I'm not necessarily saying this is my life experience. I'm using the royal we here. I've only sampled dissolution and debauchery. I need to maintain my street cred here. Yeah, I went to the whiskey library last night. Okay, but you go all in, right? And again, I don't want to lump people together, but for those of us that have struggled with addiction in one form or another, this is kind of one of the big deals of the 12-step program is that you need certainty. You also need to have that authority that I can't do it on my own. I need somebody else to help me. That kind of like needing those extremes often translates into, okay, I've crossed the river. I've done the transition. Now my goal is to make sure that I pull every other dissolute sinner out of that, right? It's a very black and white world. I don't know why I got onto this, but it's an important thing to think about. That's, yeah. Well, and you're also giving and thank you, Pat, because you're also portraying a very different model of what this looks like. I mean, so the metaphors that Jesus uses in the gospel, we're off on a tangent, that's okay. But I do want to finish this up because there's a big punchline coming here in a little bit. What are the images that we see in the gospel that Jesus uses to describe followers, and how does it function? Seeds. We're seeds that are scattered, right? We're the salt of the earth. We're the light of the world. We are not scorpion locusts on horseback with swords. We're not even a tiny virus. yeah. I mean, talk about going viral. Okay. And I saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven, wrapped in a cloud with a rainbow over his head. What's a rainbow a metaphor for in the Bible? Hope and promise and forgiveness. Okay? Hope, promise, forgiveness. Yeah, sorry. All of those things and more. But wait, there's more, like Ron Popeil would say. His face was like the sun, his legs like pillars of fire. What a vivid image. He held a little scroll open in his hand. Setting his right foot in the sea and his left foot in the land, he gave a great shout like a lion roaring, and when he shouted, the 7 thunders sounded. And when the 7 thunders had sounded, I was about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying, seal up what the 7 thunders had said, and do not write it down. And then the angel whom I saw standing on the sea and the land raised his right hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and what is in it, the earth and what is in it, and the sea and what is in it. There will be no more delay, but in the days when the 7th angel is to blow his trumpet, the mystery of God will be fulfilled as he announced to his servants and the prophets. Then the voice that I heard from heaven spoke to me again, saying, go take the scroll that is open in the hand of the angel who is standing on the sea and on the land. So I went to the angel and told him to give me the little scroll, and he said to me, take it and eat. It will be bitter to your stomach, but sweet as honey in your mouth. So I took this little scroll from the hand of the angel and ate it, and it is sweet as honey in my mouth, but when I had eaten it, my stomach was made bitter. And they said to me, you must prophesy again about many people and nations and languages and kings. Okay. Let's track this real quick. So, in 8 and 9, we had images of destruction. A third are I'm really summarizing here. A third are killed. A third is destroyed. They fail to repent. So we ratchet it up. We do 2/3 are killed. 2/3 are destroyed. And the subtext throughout all of this is that this torture, but again, apparently the angel or whoever goes back on his word, because after the first third, they're not allowed to kill anybody. They're only allowed to torture them. Okay? And these are theoretically only the people without the seal on their foreheads. And then supposedly, I guess that scheme changes. The torture doesn't work, so we go, let's try and kill another third, see if that works. And nobody repents. And so we reach the end here. What would you expect if you're following this math correctly? Nobody's left. Wipe them out. Wipe them off the face of the planet. Just like Moses and God talked about in the mountain several times. Noah. Let's let the flood come through. We'll save what we can save. And what's the image that Noah sees at the end to know that God will never again wreak this destruction on the planet Earth? The rainbow. What happens here? We have 2/3 destroyed, and what we expect is the final third. And it's interrupted. It's interrupted by another angel who comes down from heaven, wrapped in a cloud with a rainbow over his head, and his face was like the sun that was supposedly darkened. So shining light, his legs like pillars of fire. I don't get that one so much. And he's got a little scroll open in his hand. And here's again, whether there's not a right answer, but let's think creatively here about what John is seeing. There's a little scroll in his hand. We talked about this beginning. What are scrolls for? What's that? Sure. Writing things down. Censuses, communication, recording things. What's on that scroll? Could be. Could be. Could it be that this scroll represents the recording of all that just happened? So this scroll represents this image that we had here in 8 through 10. And what happens with the scroll? He rolls it up, seals it, that have the 7 thunders. What are the 7 thunders? What 7 represent? Completeness. How did this whole thing begin? The ash, the smoke pouring out, and what does the angel do? The angel takes the censer and throws it on the earth, and what happens? There's a peal of thunder. So the destruction commences with this thunder, and all that follows after it. And in this image that John is receiving, an angel comes down, he's holding a scroll that's open. The scroll is open, and we talk about the 7 thunders. I was about to write the 7 thunders. So if thunder is the commencement of the destruction, what are the 7 thunders? Maybe the complete destruction. And I was about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying, seal up what the 7 thunders have said and do not write it down. So similarly to Noah, we have an image of the divine saying, I will not destroy the earth. I will not do this. Okay? And then it's this interesting image where the prophet takes the scroll and it's sweet on his tongue, but it's bitter in his stomach. And again, there's no right answer here. Have you ever gotten angry at somebody and said some things that you thought were pretty poignant, and they felt good when they came out, but they left you with a bitter feeling in your stomach? Yeah, more often than I care to admit, right? And here we have kind of the reverse happening, where here's the scroll with the 7 thunders on it, the complete destruction that the prophet is given, which is sealed. It's not allowed to be opened and read. And he eats it, and it's sweet on his tongue, but it makes his stomach upset. You could almost say that he's swallowing his anger, right? Metaphorically speaking. Okay. Let's jump to 11, because this is now the end of the cycle. 2 witnesses. I was given a measuring rod like a staff, And I was told, come and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship there. But do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave that out, for it is given over to the nations, and they will trample over the holy city for 42 months, again with the specific times. And I will grant my 2 witnesses authority to prophesy, one for 1,260 days, wearing sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. Excuse me. If anyone wants to harm them, fire pours from their mouth and consumes their foes. Anyone who wants to harm them must be killed in this manner. They have authority to shut the sky so that no rain may fall during the days of their prophesying, and they have authority over the waters to turn them to blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they desire. When they have finished their testimony, that beast that comes up from the bottomless pit will make war on them and conquer them and kill them, and their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city that is prophetically called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. For 3.5 days, okay, for 3.5 days, members of the peoples and tribes and languages and nations will gaze at their dead bodies and refuse to let them be placed in the tomb, and the inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and celebrate and exchange presents, because these 2 prophets had been a torment to the inhabitants of the earth. But after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and those who saw them were terrified. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, come up here. And they went up to heaven in a cloud while their enemies watched them. At that moment there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. 7,000 people were killed. That's a lot less than we had before in the earthquake, and the rest were terrified and gave glory to the God of heavens. The second woe had passed. The third woe is coming very soon. Okay, I'm going to read through the rest, and we're not going to be able to get to it today because we're going to have to come back to it. We're going to run out of time, but I want to finish the chapter. Then the 7th angel blew his trumpet. There were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Messiah, and he will reign forever and ever. Then the 24 elders who sit on their thrones before God fell on their faces and worshiped God, singing, we give you thanks, Lord God Almighty, who are and who were, for you have taken your great power and begun to reign. The nations raged, but your wrath has come, and the time for judging the dead, for rewarding your servants, the prophets, and saints, and all who fear your name, both small and great, and for destroying those who destroy the earth. Then God's temple in heaven was opened, and the ark of his covenant was seen within his temple, and there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and heavy hail. I'm having bad luck with my caps today. Okay. I did not want to erase that. This is what we're waiting on. Still, the third woe. It has been temporarily interrupted. So we had the first 2 woes where supposedly 2/3 of all people were killed, but now we're talking about 7,000, like oddly specific numbers. We've got 2 witnesses. This is what we're going to talk about next week. The 2 witnesses. And who might that represent? But we'll get there. I know, I'm sorry to leave you hanging here, but I spent too much time on other stuff. That's okay, that's good. We'll come back to it next week. 2 witnesses, okay? 3.5. Oh man, you beat me to it. So why 3.5? Half of 7. What does half of 7 represent? Not the whole. So there are a bunch of potential meanings here. It's not the whole. It could mean temporary. It could mean partial, intermittent. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways of reading the significance of this number. Okay. Cup half full or cup half empty? Yes, that's very, very true to the half. What do we notice here? Yes, we are in the third section. We're getting the third woe soon. Well, I'll come out and say it. We keep getting half measures. We get in 8 through 10, we get this theoretical image of this great destruction. It's very specific. A third and a third. Seemingly for the purpose of what? Convincing people to repent. How effective is it? Not effective at all. 0% efficacy. At the end of that, we get an interruption. The third woe is not opened. We get this image of an angel that comes down with a scroll, and here are 7 thunders, which may or may not have been the third woe originally, and the angel does not open them. Instead, rolls them up, seals them, gives them the prophet swallows them. The angel has a rainbow over his head, which is an image that everybody reading this would understand, by the way. Okay? Rainbow is an easy one to understand. When it was raining on Wednesday, there was a double rainbow. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was pretty cool. We know what that means, meaning that image is telling us that, similar to Noah, God has decided not to destroy all the earth. Don't get hung up on the 2/3 yet. You're like, but what about the 2/3? Again, you're falling into the. I shouldn't put it that way. You are falling into a trap. It's not about the numbers. It's about the method. Okay. Here is one, and this is why we have to come back to this next week. Here is one of the stickiest points in all of Revelation, which is, what does the temple signify? Okay? And the reason this is important is because this specific passage is one that is pointed to by modern day evangelical Zionists as justification for the conquest of Israel, for the controlling of Gaza and or Jerusalem. Because if you're reading this as a roadmap for the end of the world, theoretically, this has to happen. There has to be the temple. And notice that the angel has this rod that he's going to measure it with, but doesn't actually measure it. There's no specific units that are given. It's kind of a strange thing. We'll talk about that next week. Theoretically, this is what there has to be. If Jesus is going to come back, there has to be a temple. And one of the theologies of Americans, of Christian Zionists, I shouldn't just say evangelical, Christian Zionists, is that in order for Jesus to come back, we need to rebuild the temple. As if it's like the Field of Dreams or something. Like literally, right? If you build it, they will come. Okay? Now, we're not reading the book that way. We're not reading the book looking at this as the roadmap for the end of the world. But if John is trying to communicate something to us, what might a temple represent? What's our temple? Our body is a temple. What else? Our being. What else? Our body, our being. How we treat other people. I'm gonna leapfrog on what you said there. Is this a temple? Metaphorically speaking. Yeah, absolutely. We call it a sanctuary, right? Is it the building that's the temple? It's the people. It's the people. So all of a sudden, after the end of this period of images of destruction, which are interrupted, we get this image that's interjected in here, which is the image of a temple, which we're going to start to unpack next week. What does the temple represent? Us, people, all of us, okay? And one of the operative questions here, as with everything that we talked about so far, is this. Who's in there? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to point out here, and then I'll let us all go, the last line of chapter 10. So this is the angel speaking to the prophet. He has swallowed the scroll that carries in it destruction. It's bitter to his stomach. And now they're giving him his next set of instructions, the next image he's supposed to prophesy about. They said to me, you must prophesy again about many peoples and nations. Nations in Greek is ethnos. So it's not necessarily governmental entities that exist within boundaries. It's peoples. You must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, and languages and kings. What's the shorthand for this? You need to prophesy again to everybody. So we tried this, wasn't super effective. We interrupted it. This is now attempt number 2. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Yes, everybody's back again.